Hello, everyone, and welcome back to People Do Want to Know podcast. For this week's episode, I finally had the chance to interview Stephanie Butnick, who is the founder of Golda, a brand new Jewish lifestyle newsletter. She hosted the hit Jewish podcast Unorthodox for nearly a decade, where listeners tuned in weekly for her thoughtful and witty takes on Jewish life and culture. Stephanie started her career at Tablet magazine as a writer and editor, and is the author of the newest Jewish encyclopedia, From Abraham to Zabars and Everything in Between. She lives on the Upper West Side of Manhattan with her husband and daughter. Stephanie is somewhat of a Jewish pop culture and legend. When I was trying to start my podcast, Unorthodox was the #1 Jewish podcast at the time, so I did a lot of competitive conquesting, listening to Stephanie's episode, what topics were covered, research, etc. I'm a fan. I also got gifted the newest Jewish encyclopedia a few years ago, and it's so cool to interview someone who put that thing together. It's an extensive book with hundreds of different Jewish pop culture and historical references. When I launched People Do Want to Know, I came out with 2 key phrases used to describe the podcast. One is obviously the chosen podcast for the chosen people. And 2, People Do Want to Know is your encyclopedia of remarkable Jewish people. The idea of an encyclopedia really resonated with me, and I wanted to capture stories of amazing Jews in one place. I frequently tell my guests before an episode, treat this episode as a page in a Jewish encyclopedia dedicated to you. What would it say at this time? So, Stephanie, believe it or not, you inspired me in many ways that I think you're not even aware of, and thank you for that. There is something joyful, colorful, and radiant about Stephanie and how she shares her Jewish life and experience online. I love her style of journalism, and she's someone I definitely look up to as an aspiring podcaster. In this episode, we learn about Stephanie's new venture, Golda, which you definitely need to subscribe to if you haven't yet. We also discuss Jewish life in general, what are the trends, what we're optimistic about, and of course, shoot the shit about Jinsta or Jewish Insta. Additionally, we talk about how I finally decided to put up my mezuzah on my apartment door and what that meant to me. In wrapping up the intro here, I'll add that Stephanie and I talked briefly about how the impact of Jewish influencership or activism, it's not really quantifiable. I did end up talking to Dan Ariely about it. Thank you, Dan. He offered me an experimental design where I could try to test the influence of influencers. If you're interested in the findings of something like this, DM me on Instagram to let me know so I can gauge if this is at all interesting to people. Because it could just be me. I don't know. Maybe I can pull off an experiment, so we'll see. Anyway, please enjoy this episode. Stephanie, hello. Welcome to People Do Want to Know podcast.
It is an honor to be here with you.
We're meeting on Purim, and I saw on Instagram you had a Hamantaschen crawl situation.
So we put up a guide to how to not have terrible Hamantaschen. I feel like every time I go to make Hamantaschen, they crumble, they explode in the oven. I'm always doing something wrong. And so what I wanted to do for my newsletter Golda is ask the experts, what do we do to keep these Hamantaschen, something we're only making once a year? How do we keep them good? And so we got really, really fun tips about the right amount of filling to dough and pinching versus folding, chilling your dough before. So I'm all in on Hamantaschen this year.
What's the best Hamantaschen in the city?
Okay, that's a great question. I think Bread's Bakery has the best Hamantaschen.
Really?
Yes.
I went on a day where they had a stale situation. They did matcha last year.
Yes.
And I was so excited.
I was excited too. That's a tough one to pull off, I feel like.
Okay, fair.
But I just feel, look, I don't really love the jams. I really want a chocolate Hamantaschen. I feel like they're kind of bold.
I agree.
And so I feel like bread, and I also really do like a pizza, sort of the savory ones.
Okay. I've never had savory, but I did make Dubai chocolate this year and it was a hit. It was kanafe and then a Nutella chocolate situation.
And it's a perfect combination of all the things. That's what a Hamantaschen is made to hold.
Okay, well, anyways, you're the Jewish lifestyle queen. That's what I'm calling you. You don't call yourself that, but I am calling you that. I'm excited to talk to you and learn a little bit more about you. With that said, tell us about yourself. What do you do and how did you get there?
That is a good question. So I've spent my whole career in the Jewish media world. When I was in graduate school, I got an internship at Tablet magazine and I sat at the front desk. I was an editorial assistant and then spent actually 13 years at Tablet, 13 amazing years where I worked my way up and wrote and edited and did all these really, really fun and special projects. And then the big one, the sort of thing I would say I'm best known for in the Jewish world, and actually why I got recognized at the JCC Cafe this morning, was for Unorthodox, which is a Jewish news and culture podcast that ran for almost a decade. And then I co-hosted. And I really just think of myself as someone who's sort of like a cipher for Jews, who says, I have questions. I don't know everything. Like, yes, I have probably an unnecessary amount of degrees in religious studies, 2. I think 2 is more than most people need, but I have a lot of questions. I'm not a particularly observant person. I'm not religious, and I'm really open with that. And so I love being Jewish. I love celebrating Jewish culture and Jewish food and even, Jewish ritual and Jewish holidays. But I really want to come from a place of questions, right? Like, I'm fundamentally a journalist. I want to know, why are we doing this holiday? What are the ways that I can make this relevant to my life right now? How can I make this custom feel like something that's, natural to my family? How can I make these sort of Jewish traditions relevant to my life? And I feel like that's what I'm trying to work through, honestly, for myself as I have grown up, as I've gotten married, had a kid. Like, I'm trying to figure out what it means to raise a Jewish family, have a Jewish home. And I think a lot of other people are trying to figure that out as well. And so what I'm trying to do in all of my projects is just help them figure that out, not in like a dogmatic way. I don't actually care how religious you are. I don't care who you marry or date or what your kitchen looks like or what you do on Saturdays. I just really, really believe that Jews are looking for connection in this moment, and they're looking for ways to tap back into that Jewish identity, whatever it looks like for them. So it's a very long-winded answer of how I got here, which is basically being obsessed with helping people live their Jewish lives in whatever way they want to.
Now, there's a new project that you're working on, the latest and greatest, called Golda, which you mentioned earlier. What are you hoping to achieve with it?
So basically, I left Tablet in the fall after 13 wonderful years there. And what I really wanted to do with my next project was create something that helped people do 3 things: learn more, do more, and buy more. I think I'm sort of the first person to pull those 3 things together. But since October 7th, I've really, really noticed that a lot of the Jewish people I know are just trying to figure out what it means to be Jewish, right? Like, suddenly they feel like there's a target on their back and they're like, wait, actually, what is this all about? Like, what does my Jewish identity mean to me? And we've seen a lot of people who have sort of come out of the woodwork and say, hey, this is actually really important to me. I might not know everything I want to know, and I might not do everything I want to do, but I'd like to sort of start getting there. And so the first thing that I started noticing as sort of a public-facing Jewish person was people were asking me, where can I get a Jewish star? I want a Star of David necklace. I've never worn one before, or I had one for my bat mitzvah and I lost it. Like, where can I get one? And so I would just start texting links to people being like, well, here, you can go here, or you could go here if you want. What's your style? Is it dainty? Is it bold? And I would just sort of start sending links to people. And then it happened so often that it was sort of becoming a little cumbersome, right? And it wasn't entirely scalable. So a friend would say, I'm doing a Shabbat dinner for the first time. Like, can I use any candlesticks? And I'm like, sure, but here are these actually really fun ones. And, oh, by the way, this store is down the block from you. Like, you should try this place. And so I felt like I was sort of routing people to the things that they needed, the objects that they needed to help express their Jewish identity and also help understand their Jewish identity. So it was like articulating it to themselves and the world. This happened enough times that I really started to realize we need a place for all of this, right? Like, I want to go somewhere and say, like, what is Shabbat? What do I need to do? And then what do I need to own for it, right? What do I need to buy? What are actually some cool tapers that, like, there's the most amazing colorful candlesticks right out there right now. And I love them and they make me want to light candles. So they might also make you want to light candles. So to me, I'm like trying to combine everything, the sort of how to, the why, and like the stuff. So that basically you can come away from what ultimately is my newsletter, Golda, with just sort of everything you need to know to do, as I call it, to live Jewishly. Because I think anyone can live Jewishly. I don't think you have to be Jewish. You don't have to be observant. I just think that people want to adorn themselves with Jewish stuff right now. And so I love my challah cover. That's from Ayin Judaica. And it's so pretty. It's made by these artisans in the Yucatan Peninsula. And it's using sort of like traditional Mexican needlepoint, but also has like these amazing Jewish motifs on there. And I'm like, this is beautiful. I want this on my table. And now I actually will do Shabbat. And so I think for a lot of us, our aesthetic and our sort of material sensibility is our way into Jewish identity, to Jewish culture, and to sort of feeling Jewish. And so, yes, I started a newsletter a few months ago called Golda, goldaguide.com. And every week we're bringing you something that is informative and also shoppable.
This is very interesting. And this is what you're doing full time now, or are you still writing on the side or doing other projects?
I'm still writing, I'm still speaking, but this to me is sort of like this is my baby right now. And so hoping to grow her and really create a resource for people that feels fun and accessible. Like the logo is hot pink. Like, I think that's actually really important that it not look like something you might associate as being Jewish or stodgy. Like this is fun. This is lively. And I think this is really, really, this is full of life and full of meaning and full of culture.
My thoughts naturally went to, it's also a great opportunity to support Israeli businesses who are in a time of war and they have a hard time monetizing their product or getting it shipped out to other markets because of the war. So it's also an opportunity for you to showcase Israeli business makers and in a very important time.
Exactly. A few weeks ago, we posted something that was 5 Israeli artists to know. And so I asked a friend who runs an art advisory and is very involved with the Israeli artist community. And she said, oh, of course, like here are 5. And we publish them and we put it on Instagram and we tag them. And, even if you're not buying necessarily like a large scale piece of artwork right now, follow those artists, get on their mailing list, go see their shows. And I think there's so many ways to support Israeli artists and artisans and businesses and Jewish artists and artisans and businesses. And something we're publishing very soon is a piece about this collective called Makers of Israel. And so it's a website that these amazing American and Canadian Jewish women put together to basically curate and source really cool stuff from Israel. And like you order it through their website, but these artisans are shipping it to you directly. And it's like this really fun way to say, like, I might not know everything about like Israeli ceramicists, but I know I need a new Seder plate or a new plate or a new just anything. And here there actually are so many resources. So what I'm trying to do is sort of curate the curation, as it were, and bring these artists, these amazing creators and creatives to just a bigger audience.
So I want to pivot to talk to you about podcasting.
Of course.
Because to me, Unorthodox is like OG on the Jewish podcast landscape. No, seriously, like when I was starting People Jew Want to Know and I was looking at what other Jewish podcasts on the market are, it was Unorthodox that was leading the way as the leading Jewish podcast. And if I'm not mistaken, the concept was 2 Jews and a Gentile. Yeah.
So the concept of the show, and by the way, I have to say, it's so nice being on a podcast where like, I don't ask the questions. It's like, as so many years, after so many years as a host, it's a delight to come on as a guest and be like, sure, I'll talk. It's really fun. So I'm grateful for that opportunity. So Unorthodox started really as a result of the meetings we were having at Tablet Magazine, where I worked for a very long time. We sort of thought, we're having these editorial meetings, but we're also bringing up things I heard on, in my neighborhood, things I saw on my Facebook feed. Is this a story? Is this, what do we think about this? And we sort of realized, and this is way back in 2015, my colleague, Mark Oppenheimer, had this insight, which was like, I think other people might be having these same conversations or might actually be interested in hearing these conversations, right? And we were all Jewish journalists. We're all very immersed in this world and we all really cared. And so his idea was, could we start sort of a chatty Jewish show with 3 hosts and each week talk about the news of the Jews, banter about our lives, our kids, our, whatever dramas were going on in our lives that week, and then have 2 guests each week, our Jewish guest and our Gentile of the week. And that was sort of the funny, I guess, conceit for the show. And I, at the beginning, was just like, that's like almost offensive. Like, how could you ask a Gentile of the week? That's so weird to ask someone to come on who isn't Jewish. But that ended up being just like the most magical portion of the show. We'd have a Jewish guest. It would be someone who wrote something or had a movie out. And it was a really fun chance to interview someone maybe who was really, really famous, but wasn't always speaking like in a Jewish context, or was someone you loved and is like this great Jewish novelist that you always wanted to hear from. So the Jewish part was like pretty straightforward, the Jewish guests, but the Gentile of the week really was fascinating because it was either someone who was very, very much part of the Jewish world, maybe was a writer who was married to a Jew, or someone who worked in an industry where they were around a lot of Jews. And so their questions were sort of like, I've always wondered this thing, or it was like a priest, right? Someone who was like so far away from what we think of as like being part of the sort of the Jewish infrastructure. And their question, so the Gentile of the week, the best part is that they get to ask a question of our panel. We called ourselves a panel of Jewish experts. And we were like, ask us anything. And the questions that people asked really got us into these amazing theological conversations. I would say like 80% of them were basically like, well, I grew up Mormon. And once I stopped believing in God, there was no place for me in the church. Or like, once I just like wasn't into church, there was no place for me in the religion. And he's like, and how come, so many people said, how come all my Jewish friends are atheists or say they don't believe in God, but like being Jewish is so important to them. And like, of course they know they're Jewish. And it was really, really fun to unpack this, both this perception, but also the reality behind it and be like, oh yeah, no, we're all Jewish. Like, it doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what you do. And there's like the dark side of that, which is like, we're all on the list. When that list comes out, like we're all Jews. We're all on that list. So there's like the dark, like Nazi era, sort of like epigenetic trauma. But I think for us, it was such a fun way to say like, oh yeah, we all love being Jewish. We just don't all do it the same way. And there's room for all of us. And so it actually expanded my understanding of like what it meant to be Jewish, to see sort of people say, we don't have that where I come from, right? Like whatever church I grew up in. And, my whole journey as like a religion major and a really, really interested in the way in which religion plays a role in people's lives. And to have the sort of uniqueness of Judaism validated externally almost, and to realize, oh yeah, Jewish like looks like whatever you want it to look like. And no one's is better than anyone else's. And like, I'm a firm believer that like, if being Jewish is important to you, you can show that in any way. It can look different. It looks different in different places. It looks different in like whatever part of the country you're in, right? Because we're here on like the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Katz is around the corner. Russ and Daughters. Like, it's so easy to be Jewish here. It's not actually so easy to be Jewish in a lot of places. I think just like respecting that and opening our minds to that is really, really important. And so maybe it took a Gentile to sort of show us and help us appreciate that.
That's so interesting. I'm actually working on a season now of the podcast where I'm going to interview non-Jews back to back, maybe 5 to 10 episodes. My brother told me I should call the segment Goy You Will Enjoy. I will workshop that.
People don't love goy. It's a very funny word.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why we're workshopping that. But in the same kind of vein, I think that there are so many non-Jewish people that have really stepped up for the Jewish community, and I want them to get the recognition and the celebration that they deserve. People who have risked their careers, people who have changed their lives. Like when we think about Daniel Ryan Spalding, like out of nowhere, now he's in Israel and he has a show on Israeli television, which I think is so amazing. And selfishly, I want to know, now that you've been doing podcasting for 10 years, do you have any best kept secrets or pieces of advice?
Okay. So the one piece of advice I would say is don't listen to what anyone says about like your voice or your cadence. As you can tell, I say like a lot. I am from Long Island. I wear it proudly, and people would write in, mostly men, actually, I would say exclusively men, and be like, and I was younger than my two male co-hosts, and they'd be like, that young one with the likes, like, what is she talking about? And we read the letter on air. And honestly, I wasn't even that offended. My co-hosts, Mark and Liel, were so offended on my behalf. They were like, you're going to say it more. Like, you cannot change how you speak. We were like making fun of this letter on air. And it's true. Like, I'm saying it now. That's how I talk, right? And so if you want me to be authentic with you on air, which I think is what we owe our listeners, right? What they deserve. That means being who you are. That means sounding the way you sound, not trying to change your voice or change your, I don't know, like dialect. Like you are who you are. And I think bringing that to listeners is so valuable and so meaningful. I mean, I think you're the heart of this show, right? People come back and they want to listen to you. I don't think that if you were sort of conscious of, oh, wait, I shouldn't do this, or I need to talk like this, like that would, I think, sort of cheapen the whole thing in many ways. And so that's my like very, very technical advice. The thing about podcasting that is really so magical and why it really, really works within a Jewish context is like, it's an incredibly intimate medium. There's a way in which I think part of like the secret sauce of Unorthodox. So we started our show 2015. That was after like Serial had broken out, right? So like everyone and their mom knew about podcasting, but it wasn't something that was super widely available in the Jewish world. There were like Parsha podcasts, and rabbis had sort of like sermon-y podcasts, but there wasn't anything that was casual and chatty and sort of took you along for the ride. And I think that was why in that moment when we, all the Pew studies say like the unaffiliateds are on the rise and synagogue membership is on the decline and people are having kids later, all the sort of like scary, headlines we read every few years that have everyone worried about Jewish continuity. Actually, what happened was that, this show we thought would just be sort of like a lark, right? Who wants, we're chatty Jews, we're interviewing people. It became huge. It became like the #1 Jewish podcast. And I think it really paved the way in a way that I'm so proud of for all sorts of new shows. And I think the reason it was so sticky was because people loved feeling like there were people who were both talking to them and listening. Like we would get letters all the time. We would read the letters on air. They would start conversations that then would flow into our Facebook group. And these debates we would have, one of them was, what was more Jewish, saran wrap or tinfoil? And like, what do you put your leftovers in? Obviously leftovers are very Jewish, but like, what do you put them in? And so I was team tinfoil, and that's like aluminum foil. Like people call it like it was tinfoil. And then there was team saran wrap. And for years and years, people would write in, or if they saw us, they'd be like, came to our live show. They'd be like, I'm team saran wrap. And these funny little things that you don't even think of spark conversation after conversation. And so I think that there's something about podcasting, and that's why I love listening to your show, is like, it feels unvarnished. Obviously things are edited, so they sound good, but it feels authentic in a way that not much coming out of media feels right now, right? It feels like you're really listening to a conversation. And seeing you put that mezuzah up on your door, we had a similar plot line, which was that I casually mentioned that I didn't have a mezuzah on my door. This was like in my walk up before I was married. And I mentioned it on air. We got so many letters, people yelling at me saying, I live in a part of the country where I can't have a mezuzah on my door. You live in New York City. You're a Jewish journalist. Like so many people were so upset that I didn't have a mezuzah. And I was really surprised by it. And you realize that people sort of invest in you and your journey. And so when I ended up moving apartments about a year or so later, I get there and there is a mezuzah on the door, and it is the ugliest mezuzah I have ever seen. And I'm like, I did not come this far. I did not get yelled at.
From God.
So I took it down and we did a whole segment about me getting a mezuzah. I went to the West Side Judaica. I got a little cloth, a little scroll. We learned about what it was. I got this beautiful mezuzah from Apoloig, which are these sisters who make really, really cool, like lucite Judaica. And we put it up on the door and I recorded it. And to me, I'm like, this is my journey. And like, yours actually might look like this too, right? Someone who's listening might say, oh, maybe I'll put a mezuzah on. Or maybe I'll think about the fact that I never put it up. It had never occurred to me to put one up. I don't know why I never thought about it. Having it pointed out to me prompted like a little soul searching. And it was a fun way to resolve this in a way that, again, like sets an example, like you writing that you had always sort of only kept them inside your apartment. And now we're moved to put one on the outside of your apartment. Like that's huge, right? And you brought your listeners along with you for it.
I'll also mention that it came at a time when my brother, who's a sophomore at the university.
Boy, you will enjoy. Trademark.
Yes. Oh my God. Daniel, first of all, has interviewed me for the podcast. He's so funny and smart. He's like beloved by the listeners, I would assume. So Daniel had his mezuzah stolen from his apartment. He lives with 3 roommates who are not Jewish. He's the only Jewish one, but they're very supportive of him. And so they all agreed that Daniel would put a mezuzah outside of his apartment door. Literally like a week later, poof, gone. So he had reported it to some like hate crime hotline at the university, specifically for anti-Semitic acts, because University of Minnesota, which I'll add, is one of the 5 campuses being investigated right now for failing to handle anti-Semitism properly. They opened a hotline for Jewish students to submit anti-Semitic incidents as a way to document them. I think it was like Chabad and Hillel. Maybe they partnered together. And so all Daniel was told was submit your incident. And he was like, what the heck? Like, that's it? So I don't think he ever hung up another one after that. But his incident was referred to in the Minnesota newspaper. And then later, when the documentation was written up about the investigation formally by the U.S. government, Daniel's incident was specifically called out.
Wow.
So he's a little undercover celebrity, my little brother. Now,
Wait, I want to talk about you. I want to talk about the mezuzah.
Oh.
How did he feel about it?
My brother?
Yeah.
Oh, he was like super pro. It was my mom that was very against me putting up a mezuzah on the outside. But honestly, try me. Somebody try me.
But it's true. It's like, it's part of you living your whole self, right? In your actual life and then on air for your listeners.
I will tell you exactly what it was that changed my mind. There was one pivotal moment. And after that moment, I said, I'm going to hang up the mezuzah. And I know exactly what it was. My friend on her podcast interviewed Rudy Rochman. And she talked about how she has friends who are scared to wear their Stars of David because they don't want to be approached on the street. And the reason she brought it up is Rudy always has this talk track of like, you got to be a proud Jew. You got to be a proud Jew. And she pushed back and said, well, you can be a proud Jew, but be ready to get your ass kicked on the subway. And this is what he said in response to that. He said, certainly you're exposing yourself to risk by being visibly Jewish. And so you might be protecting yourself, but you're actually harming the collective Jewish people because you're implying that there's something wrong with being visibly Jewish. So you may be protecting yourself, but you're harming the greater good.
And at what cost?
And
basically.
That was the thing. And I said, okay, I'm willing to take the risk on behalf of the greater good.
I had a similar moment. So a few days after October 7th, I reached out to Rachel Schnee, who's this amazing jeweler, and she makes these like really blinged out mazel rings, she calls them. And I went, I think it was like October 12th, I went to her studio on the Upper East Side. I got a big black diamond Star of David. I wore it on my middle finger and I was like, this is what I need right now. I felt like arming myself in this amazing way. And so there's one thing to like get it, right? But then you're sort of, okay, am I going to wear this in my day-to-day life? And at first I was like, yes, of course. And then one day I got on the subway and I was like, ooh, is this a good idea? It's like so noticeable. It's not like one of the dainty, like little diamond ones. It's like, it's black diamonds. It's like, it's really out there. And so I was sitting there being like, should I have my hands in my lap? And I was like, should I turn the ring around? I think a lot of us are having sort of conversations like these in our heads, wherever we are in the universe and whatever way we're showing our Jewishness. And then I looked across the subway car and I see sitting right there is an Orthodox man, like so visibly Orthodox, right? That's the whole point, right? Like the yarmulke, like this. You know who he is and you know what he is. And so I had this moment of like, oh, well, if he can't like turn the ring around and he's not trying to do that, like I shouldn't either. And I think that there's been something really nice that's happened in the past year and a half. It sounds crazy to say that anything nice has happened, but like there is this sense of collective. And, I went to my coffee shop and I saw a new barista and she had a Star of David necklace. And I said, I like your necklace. And I said it loud.
I always tell people when I see something, yes. I always make a comment.
And it's an instantaneous connection. I actually was driving down the West Side Highway and I saw a woman in the car next to me driving and she had the Rachel Schnee ring on and it's big. You could see it because I could see her hands while at the steering wheel. And I just almost started waving. I didn't want to distract her, but I was like, it's this amazing feeling of we're in the same club. We're in this together. And you've chosen to be proud about that. And so can I. And so I think we're all it's like these little high fives we're giving each other as we go about our day. Again, easier in heavily Jewish areas, right? But I think about that guy in the subway and you're like, yeah, everyone knows he's a Jew. That's the point, right? That's the whole thing. And so a nice way for the rest of us, we're sort of upping our game, I think. And whether that's wearing a little dainty, Star of David necklace, or whether that's wearing a clothing with Hebrew, a dog tag for the hostages, there are so many ways that we can visibly show our Jewishness. And it's not even actually about the people who are not Jewish. It's it's sort of to support each other along the way.
No, I agree completely. And Rachel would be delighted to hear that you see people with her ring and that you feel a connection to people who also share the ring. This is exactly what she talked about on her podcast episode when she came on, that her jewelry collection has created a community amongst predominantly women who wear these things, and then they feel a connection when they see each other and feel connected to the item itself. What I'll say is silver lining in anything, in any difficult Jewish time, and all your work that you've been doing, whether it's Unorthodox or you're writing for Tablet, especially Golda, is a positivity in a time of darkness for the Jewish people. Talk to me about what you're optimistic about.
That is a great question. I feel like every time I open my Instagram, people are just so mad. They're mad about this thing. All these things are legitimate, right? They're mad about anti-Semitism. They're mad about this. And they're you should be mad too. And it's true. And that's a really important function that people are I don't envy the people who do that. I think I bring something different, which is basically just, let's take a deep breath. Let's actually remember what it means to be Jewish. Let's remember why we like being Jewish. Let's remember all of the positive things about this tradition that the people who are hating on us don't actually care about. They don't want us to pay attention to. And I think for me, this is the long game at this point, right? And so what I want to remind people is first of all, it's okay to relax. It's okay to close your phone, not pay attention to every horrible story. It's still going to be there, when you come back, right? But maybe for a Friday night, you light candles or order in sushi and just sit with your family. I don't really care what it looks like, right? But there are these moments that we can stop and say, what does it mean to me to be Jewish? How can being Jewish positively impact my life? And what are the ways it actually already is? What are the values that I was either raised with or took on, voluntarily? What are the things about being Jewish that make me me? And so I think in a funny way, reading a book is a Jewish act, right? We are the people of the book. Let's just read a good Jewish book, right? I don't care what it is. It could be fiction. It could be, an actual Jewish text, but there are so many things we can just do to stop. And maybe it's eating a Jewish food. Maybe it's cooking a Jewish food. There's just so many little ways we can tap into our Jewish identity that make us feel good. And I think we're so focused on the way being Jewish is being used against us or is something that we're supposed to feel bad about. And I just want to reframe the narrative for people a little bit and say why don't you just here, you want to know a little bit more about being Jewish? You want to do a few more Jewish things? Again, whether that's reading a book, cooking, or going to services, right? Again, it looks different for all of us. And I just want to help people feel good about their Jewish identity. And for a lot of us right now, that actually is supporting Jewish artists and Jewish vendors and Jewish businesses. And could you buy something that actually makes you happy, is totally beautiful, and lets you support someone whose beliefs you identify with, right? Who may be struggling in this moment. And so to me, I think that all three of those pieces of learn more, do more, buy more is what we need right now. And you might say it's crazy, right? Oh, you don't need to buy something to feel better. That mazel ring made me feel good about being a Jew. You could say that's silly, that's frivolous, that's superficial, but I actually disagree. And I think that there's such an emphasis in Judaism on material culture, right? On the beauty of things. We have the Hidur Mitzvah, the idea of sanctifying a commandment by making it beautiful. To me, I'm let's talk about that, right? Let's bring beauty, let's bring joy, let's just bring some happiness, some positivity into this universe.
I think that's such an important point you're bringing up about did you see on the news that so-and-so said this? Did you see it's the World Zionist Congress elections? You have to vote slate 5 and slate 5 only. And it's so overwhelming because every single day there's something new to fight about, to be defensive about, to combat, to yell about. And being Jewish is not about writing checks or going to galas or posting on social media. To me, that's not what being Jewish is. Being Jewish is about living a Jewish life, building a Jewish family, having a Jewish home. And that manifests more in how you choose to do your meals, what rituals do you follow. Certainly, one way in which you can advocate for the Jewish community is speaking up on social media, being an activist and whatever. But we're too far on the side of the spectrum that forgets that being Jewish is a way of life. It's deed, not creed.
No, it's true. And I think that there's a preservation, right? Like Jews have always been through hard things. But right now it seems like someone is trying to tell me to be mad every single day. And you're right. It's like, vote this, do this. Oh, you didn't do this. You do this one. It's like, my head is spinning. I don't actually know what matters and what doesn't. And again, maybe that's helpful for people, but like, I just think that we need to all say, how are we going to get through the next year, right? Like the news cycle is fast. How am I going to get through not just today, this hour, this next post, this week? What do I want my Jewish year to look like? What do I want my holidays to look like? I think that we're in a very, very, very short-term environment where we're almost losing our ability to think critically about like the long-term future. And I'm not talking like geopolitically, right? Like I leave that to other people who know way more than I do.
But even they don't know.
Yeah. I just think our heads are spinning. And when your head is spinning, you're not your best self, right?
Like survival mode.
And so I think a lot of us realized this, sadly, like a few months after 10/7, where it was like, at least, for us in like the media business, it was like, oh my God, we actually have to like go to sleep. Like we can't run on just pure adrenaline because this is actually going to be a long scale situation.
Yeah, it's a war.
It's really depressing and it's horrible. And like, I'm not in Israel. I'm not like on the front lines in any way, but how do I, as at that point, like a podcaster and sort of a leader in the Jewish universe, how do I serve people is by like trying to figure things out myself, trying to help them figure it out. But you also need to sort of take care of yourself. And I think that there's so much frenzy right now and so much agitation. And like, it's no one's fault. I mean, it's the news. The news is crazy, everything, whatever. Everything is, every day it's something. But I think it's like, this is why Shabbat is important, right? Like, I think I didn't observe Shabbat. I probably still don't observe it in the realest way, but it's kind of nice to just like shut down on a Friday night and be like, I'm actually going to put my phone away. Like God said so, right? Like I think for many of us, it is a relief to just take a little break and say like, what kind of person do I want to be? What kind of life do I want to live? What do I want my kid to grow up knowing? And I think that when I think about the questions that my friends have, my daughter is in a Jewish preschool in Manhattan. The moms there, the dads there, like we're worried about what it means to raise a Jewish kid, not like what this latest step in like not the news, right? It's like this longer term thing. And I think having a child, my daughter's 3.5, has really allowed me to key into like a different type of time, right? A longer term thing where I'm like, what does my Jewish life look like? Oh God, there's actually a person here, like things are on the line now. I don't want to be the person who's riling up everyone around me because I don't think that's helpful. It's not helpful to me and it's not helpful to them. And so I think for all of us, like, I love what you're doing, right? You're taking this like singular talent you have of connecting to people and to sharing their stories, and you're bringing that to hundreds of thousands of people. And I love that. And for me, I'm like, can I bring my like distinct brand of honest and authentic, curious Judaism to other people? Like, great. No one's doing that, right? Like, I don't need to yell at everyone just like everyone else. I think we all need to figure out like what our unique skills are in this moment and long term. That was a long answer. I didn't remember the question.
Thoughtful answer. I have a very hard question for you. And it's one that I haven't asked any other guest before.
Ooh.
And I just like, now that it's in front of me, I realize how difficult it is. So it's okay if you're like, I don't know how to answer
I'm
this.
going to answer it.
Okay. The question is, what do you think the Jewish community will look like 50 years from now? It's a hard one.
Okay, hold on. 50 years from now, that's 75?
Yeah.
Okay. I think you can take the sort of demographic trends you're seeing, right? People getting, well, again, I don't know if even those are going to change. Okay, let's go as broad as possible. I think it's going to look different.
Fact.
Okay, I've officially answered the question. I think it's going to look different in a number of ways. I think Jewish families look different in a really, really great way. I think that there's an embrace and acceptance of intermarriage that didn't exist 10, 15, 20 years ago. I think it could get better. I mean, I think something I've always respected was when people marry people outside of their faith, they really have to decide what's important to them. When I married Ben Cohen from New Jersey, we just were like, we want a rabbi or a cantor or someone who like we'll do a ceremony that like is kind of on Saturday, like we'll go within the bounds. It was actually pretty easy to find someone. If I had to at that moment tell someone, Ben, with a different last name, not Cohen, what Jewish rituals I cared about and what were my non-negotiables and what I was willing to compromise on, I couldn't have done that. I didn't know enough about what was important to me. And so I think that there's something so valuable in that exchange of traditions, but also in that exchange of like identity. And so if you're marrying someone who isn't Jewish, I don't judge that. I actually say, great, what is your life? Like, what is your Jewish life going to look like? What is your Jewish home going to look like? It's going to be different than mine probably, but it's cool to think about that you get to sort of architect that yourself. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And I think what I've noticed anecdotally is like the non-Jewish spouse is always so involved, right? Like, and some of my favorite friends in preschool have been like the non-Jewish moms who are married to Jewish guys and are just like, holy crap.
Right, good point.
No, but they're like, oh my God, I'm raising my son in the world. Like they're sort of catching up to things, but they have no baggage about it, right? So they're like, this is a proud Jewish boy that I'm raising and he will love, like they have such pride in a way that we're just like, oh no, but I kind of get why people don't like us. Like we're the problem in a funny way. And like, you see these people who are just like, oh my God, I'm taking on this life, right? They don't have to, maybe they convert, maybe they don't, but like they're raising a Jewish family. And yes, again, looks different than maybe it did a generation ago or for the majority of Jewish population. I don't know, but I love it. I love it for them, right? As they say. And so we're going to have that. I think we're going to have families, people having kids older. I mean, maybe we're going to have a return to like a more traditional family structure, whatever. And then people are going to go back to moving to the suburbs the way they used to right when they get married. But like overall, I think our institutions are going to change. I think if you look at what people are turning to, they're turning to podcasts, they're turning to newsletters. They're not necessarily turning to like the communal institutions their parents or grandparents turn to. And so I think we're going to have to see whether those institutions who serve, an amazing purpose, can they adapt? Or are they going to sort of have to fall by the wayside? I think we're in a very big inflection point right now that I think we're going to see the 50 years out of sooner than that, right? Because it's like, if I'm finding my Jewish education, my Jewish connection through a podcast, do I go to synagogue? Do I go to my federation? Do I go to my whatever acronym of choice is the Jewish institution my parents and grandparents supported? Maybe not. And so I think that that's exciting to see whether these legacy institutions can adapt and serve this population, or whether it's going to be up to people like you to sort of harness this Jewish energy that we see. You see it with your listeners, you see it with your followers. People want Jewish engagement right now. They want Jewish. They want to live Jewishly. And I think that I'm optimistic about what that looks like, because to me, that's the most exciting thing, right? Being Jewish and the Jewish people, it's all about reinvention, right? Temple's destroyed. We got to go. We're going to write everything down, right? We're going to write it down. We're not going to write it down as like a list of what to do. It's going to be a series of questions. Everyone's going to fight about it. And like, no one's going to understand why, but we're going to bring that with us. And then we're going to all these places. And then, oh wait, we got to go somewhere else. It's like, we've always been adapting. We've always been reinventing, and we've been keeping what's most valuable to us and adapting with the other stuff, right? Like our food practice looks very different here than it did 100 years ago, wherever our families were. That's because we adapt to the times and we adapt to the places we're in. And so I think we're very resilient people, and we're very, very creative. And I think the question is, how flexible can we be?
I was sitting there thinking like how difficult it is to predict these things, but I really loved your answer. And I love how you connected it to media, because this is something that you know in and out. Here are my thoughts on this as I was sitting here listening to you. I agree with you. And some additional thoughts I had was, we are in the Messianic era. So all the Orthodox people think the Mashiach is coming, which means that Jews will be in Israel. And a part of me thinks it could be. We're not that far away. We're within, 300 years? So my prediction is that Israel is going to be bigger and stronger than it was 50 years ago, even against all odds now. But as a result of that, I think there will be a divergence between Israeli Jewish culture and diasporic Jewish culture. And that divergence is already very apparent. Israeli Jews are very different from Russian Jews and Mexi Jews and whoever else. They're a Middle Eastern people with Middle Eastern sensibilities. And Ashkenazi Jews, they're European people with European sensibilities. So there are big cultural differences. I think there will be a divergence. And that will be difficult for Jewish organizations, especially in America, to navigate, because their whole thing is about connecting diasporic Jews to Israel. But if cultural differences are so large, how can you get people to connect to each other if they come from such different backgrounds? So that's the first thing I think might happen. I think the proportion of Jewish families that have a parent who is non-Jewish will grow even more than it is today, which is what, 70%? And something that you talked about with Jewish organizations that I'm already seeing, which I think will continue to be a trend, is something that I have no basis for this opinion, but this is just how I feel, okay? And this is my podcast, so I can say that.
I mean, why else have a podcast?
Right, than to share your opinion, unsolicited opinion. So there's something about Jews right now, I think, and like people, especially in America, where we want community, but the society and how it operates, and it doesn't give us that opportunity. Like everywhere in America, you have to drive a car. The cities that are walkable are not designed to be walkable. They're still designed for cars. Like even in New York, like the sidewalks are all messed up. Like you're fighting with the people in the bike lane to cross the street. So the infrastructure of America is not conducive to connection, to family, to community building. We don't have like kibbutzim, where all the houses face the same central, what is it called? Cul-de-sac. That's the word I'm looking for, cul-de-sac. So I think over years it has disconnected people from each other in a way where they do seek community. And so these Jewish organizations, in the same vein, right? They're not fostering a sense of community. You're going to these events, you're in a room with 200 Jews, and you're like, okay, why am I here? Why does this matter? What's the purpose? So what are these Jewish organizations doing? Organizations like Mem Global, formerly Moishe House, they're starting to give funding directly to people they consider, quote unquote, super connectors, people who are very connected and can host their own private events to bring people together, so that you're doing an event of 40 trendy Jews instead of 200 random Jews in the basement of Temple Emmanuel in Manhattan. So the one trend that I see is that Jewish organizations will evolve, like you said, to give funding to individual Jewish people who have their own networks and empower them to host their own events. That's a small trend. I don't think it would take even 50 years. It could happen, next year.
It is funny because you and I were both in the same breakfast room at a recent conference of a major Jewish organization. And this was like the influencer breakfast, right? And there was a chance to ask questions, and someone said, will you financially support us? And the answer was sort of like, oh, maybe we'll think creatively about it. But it is interesting now, you're seeing all these people sprout up with really, really big followings. And again, like there's risk in that inherent, right? Like people are saying like, oh, I've lost all my other brand deals because I talk about Jewish stuff now. That's like an interesting thing to contend with. And to me, there's so much growth and opportunity, right? Like there's such a democratizing aspect of social media. It goes the other way, right? Because all of a sudden we've like, I'll follow this one person and become obsessed with them. And then, oh wait, they have politics we don't like. And then we hate them. And it's like, there's like, in a funny way, it's sort of like this wild, wild west of just like people popping up. But if I think about it, like these Jewish creators have brought me so much joy over the past year and a half. People who maybe have been doing this for a long time and maybe have gotten a wider following now that people are really keyed into Jewish stuff, or people who used to do other things and have now found themselves like with a big following and caring enough about Jewish stuff to talk about it. And so I think that's really, really meaningful. But again, like how do you sustain that? Because that's like a sort of a sole proprietor situation, that's really hard to maintain.
Well, here's what I'll say about that influencer breakfast. The organization that held the breakfast is ADL, and their mission is to combat anti-Semitism. It's not to create Jewish events, Jewish families, Jewish programming, or empower young Jews to find community. So in that sense, if they don't want to support creators who are looking to do that, fine, right? The creator that asked about that more so meant, will you support us in our like activism efforts? So this is how I understood the question from that creator.
I said financially support
us. So that when you're making content, educational videos, when you're going to speaking engagements, ADL has some, let's say, financial stake in your work. If you have to hire a social media team to help you edit the reels that you make, educating people about the rise of anti-Semitism, ADL could pay, 50%. I'm making something up. That's how I understood his question. Here's my 2 cents on that. The Jewish activism space, it's very hard to measure performance and success. It's very hard to demonstrate ROI. The effect of Jewish activism on Instagram, in some sense, is immeasurable. So naturally, when you can't measure the performance of something, people don't want to give you money. If you can figure out how to measure results, everybody will give you money. So if you can solve that problem, it'll be solved. And the person who asked that question, I came up to him after, because he's a good friend of mine and very smart. And I said, there's no proof in the pudding. That there's no way to prove that anything anyone's doing here is impactful, makes money. Like certainly you can deduce a few things or assume a few things, but you're not coming to them and saying, I made this post. 10 people as a result of this post are now drafting into the IDF. I don't know, something like that, right? Or because of my post, Mary broke up with her non-Jewish boyfriend, Max. And
Jewish continuity ensured.
Right. And I was like, so why do you think, come on, like, it's kind of a cheap shot question.
You're such a realist.
I keep it real. So, and I was like, explain it to me. Like you are a former founder. You had a successful startup. You know how money works. And he goes, I think they need to take a leap of faith. So there you have it, folks.
No, I think it's true. And I think you obviously can't show like a screen grab of someone who wrote you and said like, you don't know how meaningful your stories are to me. I live here and I don't have a Jewish community. Like that doesn't, I hear you. But I think that is what so many of us are seeing. Like I would never call myself an influencer. I'm a journalist, I'm a writer, I try to be sort of an objective voice. The conversations that I've had over my decade of hosting Unorthodox, and we've been all over the country. We've done live shows. We've done book tours. The most valuable thing, the most validating thing are like the conversations with the people I meet along the way, or the people who are like in my DMs on Instagram, just being like, I love Unorthodox. It got me through X, Y, or Z. Or like, I was listening while I was converting because my rabbi told me about it. And like, yeah, that's not quantifiable, right? Like there's no way to measure that. But to me, that's what makes the work so fulfilling. Like, again, this morning in a cafe on the Upper West Side, someone came up to me and was like, I was a really big fan of Unorthodox. It made me so happy. And she was in rabbinical school and she just was stopping by the cafe to get Hamantaschen. Like it was the best run in. And it made me feel so good because you know what it's like to put stuff out there into the world. To like week after week do a podcast and feel like you're putting yourself out there and you get to this. And if you make a mistake, everyone writes you and yells at you. But you realize that, again, through this intimate medium, and I think Instagram can be like that. I think people have a connection with the people they follow. Maybe TikTok too. I don't mess TikTok, so I don't know as much, but like there are these connections being made and it shows how much people are looking for that, right? They're finding it in podcasters. They're finding it in social media content creators. It
doesn't make money. And that's the problem. It doesn't make money for the organization.
But it's so valuable. Like,
100%.
Yes, you're right. I was doing this like as my full-time job.
The best things in life are free. Like this is what they say.
I just wish there was a way to sort of measure the value in a different way.
He who comes up with that solution will be very rich. Mm-hmm. If you can figure out how to tie Jewish activism into key results and how to demonstrate the ROI of Jewish activism, you will make a lot of money.
I think the problem is the way we would measure that is to see what people would pay for. Again, that's not an institutional thing. That's like, what newsletters do you pay for? We now have conditioned people after many years of time. You can read everything for free. Now it's like, okay, if you want to read these Substacks, the best stuff is below the paywall, right? So you have to sort of invest in a way. And I think actually people are kind of catching on to that and realizing like, oh, I like this writer. I want to support them. I'm going to support their Substack, or I'm going to follow their whatever Patreon. And I think we're sort of retraining people in a helpful way. I wonder, again, this is putting it on individuals as opposed to organizations. But like, I'm curious, like if Instagram weren't free, what creators would you pay for? That's a good question for everyone.
They should do this kind of research in general, I think. This would be really good research for any creator, not just Jewish. I would
say that the Jewish institutions could also like more easily distribute money than like, let me get 500 subscribers, all paying $5, like out of the goodness of their heart.
I got to bring Dan Ariely back to talk about this. He's the behavioral economist,
of course.
And he's done plenty of experiments where you ask people to allocate money a certain way and see.
Give them 10 influencers and see who they pay for. Just kidding.
Yeah.
And then publish those results on Instagram.
Tell me, how can people connect with you on social media and learn more about your work?
So the best place to follow me is Instagram. I'm at @sbutnick, SBUTNICK. You can follow Golda on Instagram at Golda Guide. You can subscribe to Golda. It is free for the moment, at least, at goldaguide.com. I have a website, stephaniebutnick.com. You can contact me via email. I'm always happy to like talk to your community, come to your community, do anything you want. Really, I love connecting with people. I love hearing people's stories and trying to help them live their Jewish lives.
And what's a piece of Jewish history you love?
Okay, this is dark, but I have been thinking about this a lot.
That's most Jewish history.
There's this amazing book called The Light of Days by Judy Battalion, and it's about all of these female resistance stories during Holocaust. And there's one thing in the book, I don't even remember like whose story it was part of, but it was just the fact that all of these Jewish youth groups in pre-war Europe, they were like the Zionist ones, and then there were like the socialist ones, and the like they all disagreed. And in the book, it comes up like they don't want to help each other during the resistance because like they like Israel and we don't. Like there's the actual same shit we're dealing with. And so on the one hand, you're like, how funny is that? Like we've always been having these fights. The other way to look at it is like, oh my God, there was a real enemy out there and we were fighting amongst ourselves, right? So there's like the haha Jews, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. And then there's also this piece of it that was like how detrimental that was, that we were fighting against ourselves. I mean, it wasn't actual fighting, right? It was just like, oh, I'm not going to help you. Or just having these sort of antagonistic relationships about like bigger ideas. And the freaking Nazis are like at the gate. And so I think that I'm taking that and trying to remember like, yes, the Jewish values of debate and discussion. And yes, we all never are going to agree on everything and that's fine. But then also trying to see the bigger picture, which is like, if we are so busy destroying ourselves from within because you think this about this and I think this about this and oh, you like this politician, but I hate them. We lose sight of like our actual enemies. And I think that there's something so powerful about keeping that in mind, right? Like you don't have to agree with everyone, but like we're all in this together.
I love that. And I have one final question for you. Okay. It's one that I ask every guest of the podcast. Who would you like to nominate for People Jew Want to Know?
So one of my favorite colleagues at Tablet was Tanya Singer, and she and I created this series called Beautifully Jewish, which was a real celebration of like all material culture within Judaism. We did one segment all about like the velvet folding chair that all of our families seem to have in the basement for holidays that you bring out. And for us, it was just like, let's look at this chair, but also like what it meant to be inclusive and welcoming as Jews on these holiday occasions. And we looked at different things like that you maybe wouldn't think twice about, but actually have like real amazing Jewish significance. And she's now running Beautifully Jewish on her own. And I just love her. I love what she does. She's like really enmeshed in the craft community. I think that's technically enmeshed is the perfect word for that. But she is just making such beautiful art with a growing community of people, all inspired by their Jewish identity. A lot of it is, in tribute in support of Israel and Israelis. And to me, it just shows like the way people all have something different to give. She has harnessed this amazing craft community and they knit hats for Israeli soldiers. They make these little worry dolls for kids in Israeli hospitals. And it's like, if you think, oh, I'm just a knitter, what can I do to help Israel? There's actually something you can do. And I think that it's such a great reminder that like we all have skills and they are all really important and like they don't look alike. But again, just as our Jewish observance, our Jewish identities don't look alike, we're all part of this tapestry.
We're all in this together. I freaking love Tanya. She's also doing the Simchat Torah challenge. Yes. She gifted me a humash.
I was there for that.
That was crazy. I was like, oh, the book opened, I have never like owned a humash before, so I was so touched. She's the best. Thank you for this nomination. And thank you so much for joining me on People Jew Want to Know.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please go ahead and rate us 5 stars. Be the first to hear our episodes by subscribing to People Jew Want to Know wherever you get your podcasts. And for exclusive content, follow us on Instagram at People Jew Want to Know.